It's the M&A panel, and we've got, we're chock full of industry heavyweights for you here. I will give you a quick introduction and actually take it out to all these folks. That'll take a minute or two to tell them, or to tell you guys about themselves and their companies. So we've got Paul Brockman, I'm sorry, Patrick Brauckmann.
The other thing.
Yes, the other one. So we've got Patrick Brockman, who's the executive chairman of Pasha Brands. Patrick, you want to say a couple words about yourself here and what you guys do over at Pasha?
Pasha is, I think, Canada's first Prohibition-era brand house. Our approach to the market was to gather the legacy growers, the brands that were on the shelves of dispensaries prior to legalization. At the same time, we took advantage of the new regulations with Health Canada to allow for a micro-cultivator or a craft grower to get in the regulated economy. So we bought an LP, and instead of growing flower, we're entering into supply agreements to purchase that flower from craft growers across the country. So we're the largest craft brand house. At the same time, we're aggregating all of that production that is currently supplying 90%, of Canadians' needs. So that's my latest. A year ago, I was part of a company called Doja Cannabis. I was a founding director, and we got really lucky. It was a lifestyle brand, and I smoked my first joint in grade 7, and I've loved cannabis. I've made money with it and made love with cannabis, and it's been a really great experience. And so Canopy came knocking and gave the shareholders a huge win, and so that's kind of my latest thing. I love cannabis, and I love the culture that created this industry, and I've taken an approach that is focused on that community and helping them transition so that they can really take back that industry that was stolen from them. So that's me.
Thanks, Patrick. And then we've got Bobbi Paley from
Hi.
Art Assets, Inc.
I come out of the real estate and the fine art worlds. I started investing in cannabis 5 years ago with my son. He was at that time cultivating about 5,000 feet. He now has licenses in LA, and we've made investments around the world in what I call an ecosystem. So the underpinnings are technology, science, innovation, and I'm very interested in women and their companies and their products, and often invest in them.
One of the women she's interested in is our own Jamie Pearson, who's COO of Bhang Corporation.
Hi, I'm Jamie Pearson, the COO of Bhang Corporation. Bhang is a publicly traded global house of brands. We started with our award-winning chocolate bar developed by a master chocolatier and have since evolved into over 100 SKUs. We are currently distributed in 9 US states and 9 foreign countries. Our Canadian partner was on the previous panel, Neil with Indiva, and they've got a booth next door there, so go check them out. Bhang is really has a global vision for where cannabis can be, and we're executing that vision strategically, and M&A is a huge part of that process. I am the daughter of a cultivator. He's been cultivating 55 years, so I'm a second-generation cannabis person. But I made my way in business in real estate and finance, much like Bobbi. I was a real estate investor for 25 years. Doing those deals, going to get money for deals, came easy to me. I have real estate investments in 3 countries, so I've learned how to navigate rules depending on where we are, the culture, the finance rules, the governmental rules. So deals were coming across my desk in the real estate space that had to do with cannabis, and obviously having a dad in cannabis and being a business person in the cannabis space, I started seeing these deals come across my desk and realized there was an opportunity for me to get into cannabis directly, and saw it for the opportunity that it is. It's going to be the next big global thing. We are all there. We're pre-prohibition, but we can't put the genie back in the bottle. People are getting addicted to those tax dollars and starting to see what cannabis can do, not only for governmental organizations with funding, but also we're seeing opioid addiction rates go down and domestic violence go down, and we're starting to see the real benefits of this magical plant, and also the benefits in the environmental era that we can start ushering in if we're going to be responsible. So a little bit about my story, a little bit about Bhang. I'm excited to be here, and I'll turn it over to you.
So then we've got Paul Pedersen, CEO, co-founder of Nextleaf. Paul.
So I've been in the industry for about 6 years now. I was initially working for Peace Naturals. We were the first producer in Canada. Worked with the founders to sell the company to Kronos Group and started Nextleaf. Our focus was to acquire and develop extraction technology that we felt would lower the cost per milligram when you're looking at CBD and THC as ingredients. And obviously very excited for 2.0 products. We just announced a deal today with BevCanna, our now exclusive beverage partner. So very excited to start commercializing some of our distillates and high purity oils through our manufacturing partners that are now starting to come online.
Very cool, thanks. And just for a little context, again, I'm Dean Arbit. I help run a couple entities. One is Wagner Dimas, which is a company that has developed and patented pre-roll technology. We operate with a licensee called Arbit in California, which rolls the most joints in the world. And then we've licensed our technology to Aurora here in Canada. And then the other company is Bud.com, which is a delivery and online retailer. So I'm an investor, an entrepreneur, sort of all of the above, just to give you guys a little bit of context. And sort of jumping right in, we've got two investors here, or operator investors that are based in the US, and myself, that makes 3. And then we've got a couple Canadians, right? So first question is, how does the structure, meaning if you're private or public, how does that affect M&A activity from the standpoint of each of these companies? So kick it out to Patrick first. How do you look at, based on how that company is structured and where they are, how does that affect sort of your view of them?
Structure, from my perspective, is looking at management and what kind of control does management have and how much that management group has invested, and then outside shareholders is key, for longevity. I think those are probably the two most important. I don't know that issued and outstanding really is that relevant, but that's my take.
Structure, interesting. I'm an investor without a fund this time, so it's just my own money. So I tend to look very carefully at management, and I tend to usually want to work closely with that management on expanding their opportunities. Sometimes it's helping raise some more capital. More often now it's cross-pollinating. But I've just hit a little interesting thing that I'm going to speak about, even though it's quite private. I've been invited on the board of a public company, so some of the companies that I've invested in, I've brought to management, and we're negotiating very tightly for some of those companies. So when we talk about structure, I don't have a deal structure to bring these investments to the company, and I'm now thinking and wondering, and I'd love any counsel from any of you, is what do I charge for my services, since I haven't gone on the board yet, and I'm acting, in fact, as an investor broker to bring a company, a whole company, into the mix of a public company. So I'd love counsel on that. I don't have an answer this week.
Jamie?
So Bhang went public through an RTO on the CSE in July. Before that, obviously, we were a privately held company, and I think our pre-public life was very much developing our strategic plan. Once we went through that going public process, which was very painful, and if any of you are planning to do that, please come talk to me. But seriously, I learned a lot from that process, and it took a lot of a lot of people, a lot of lawyers, and a lot of paperwork that, in retrospect, caused us to put a strategic plan together that's very focused. And now our M&A look is focused on where are those margin and revenue accretive opportunities where the fit is perfect for what we need to grow bigger. So we're not only looking to grow our top line and our bottom line revenue, and we're looking to grow our distribution reach, and we're looking to grow our brand recognition reach, and we're looking for companies that aren't looking for somebody. I get a lot of this. I have this great idea. And basically what they're saying is, I developed a great product, I need money, and I need you to run my business for me because I have a great idea in cannabis, but I don't know how to run a business, I don't know how to do marketing, I don't know how to get distribution, and they basically want to bring me their great idea and help me make them successful. We're looking for the same thing. We're looking for companies that have a value add for Bhang that fill some of the gaps that we have so that these acquisitions are strategic and fit well with what Bhang has going on. We've been a CPG company since day one. We have been putting consumer packaged goods in the hands of consumers around the world for 10 years. So we're very clear about what we need and what lanes we're going into. We just acquired a beverage company called Red Ace Organics. If any of you read that press release, we're excited about that because it's professional athletes, it's Olympic athletes that are using these products because they are, the new buzzword is aptogenetic functional beverages. Red Ace has been selling these products in the large chain distribution centers like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Amazon for years, and has this massive following of athletes that are using these products because they work. So we saw that as an accretive acquisition for Bhang because it fit some holes that we had in our distribution plan. And so that's what we're looking for. Prior to going public, we just looked at every deal as we were kind of figuring out who we wanted to be. Now we're clear about who we are, and we're going after it.
So I guess just to clarify, and then we'll take it out to Paul and actually maybe back to Patrick after that. But I'm talking about, do you as a public entity look at pubcos or private companies more favorably when you're looking at M&A activity? So does that actually impact your decision making?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the willingness of management in a private company to engage with you. So, but I think effectively, you'd want to target something private.
You do?
Yeah.
Jamie?
I'm a big believer that you just look for the win-win opportunity, and where there's a meeting of minds where you've got management that's really in sync with goals and aligned with, I think, the philosophy. We're not looking for a money grab, and we're not out there just trying to gain top-line revenue. We're out there really looking for, like I said, those accretive acquisitions that make sense for us, and if they're private or they're public, I'm going to take a look at them.
And are you doing deals for stock or cash or both?
Every deal is just like in real estate, every deal is its own animal, and you got to figure out what works for both people.
So what I'm hearing is essentially it's irrespective of the wraparound. It's about what they're doing and the team. So Paul, do you agree?
Clear though, a publicly traded company merging or acquiring another publicly traded company or investing in, or that gets very complicated.
Yeah. Paul, you want to chime in?
I was just going to say, for structure, we always say that, there's a lot of froth out in the market today. If you look at, valuation or market cap versus of a publicly traded company versus a private, there's not a lot of fundamentals that make sense right now. There's a company with a $900 million market cap that did $20,000 in cannabis revenue the first 6 months of 2019, right? Won't mention the name, but, I think... I think what we've seen in this industry is that there's a lot of companies that have been structured to be publicly traded companies that to fool retail investors. At the end of the day, this bubble is going to pop in the sense that a bubble is created when you can finance a company on storytelling. But the good thing is I think we're getting to a place where we're having fundamentals to driving your business and being able to put out a product that consumers want. at a price that you guys can make money at is something that is going to make sense. When we look at acquisitions, we look at privately, private companies. We look at technology that's come out of the legacy market in BC. I think we've been very successful in working with operators and entrepreneurs that maybe have needed help to commercialize their technology. And I think this is the thing that we love about British Columbia, is that there's some great operators and some very experienced cannabis people in this province. So we're really having fun, and for us, we've been focused on intellectual property, so not just acquiring technology, but filing patents around us. And with the Altrias and the Consolidation brands of the world, we think that intellectual property really allows the small guys to force the bigger guys to play nice.
Agreed. And so, Paul, you make a great point that right now there is sort of a flight to quality. We've started to see that sort of away from these sort of bombastic, just really headline-grabbing sort of optical business models, and really, really inflated valuations based on top-line revenue. Are you guys seeing right now? Are you guys seeing sort of a shift in focus with your companies, more for sort of profitability, engaging potential M&A targets by their EBITDA and not top line?
I think there's going to be really two. At least we've seen some acquisitions in the last 12 months, but going forward, I think that still many of the big five, for example, are overpriced, overvalued, and they're still going to need to fill in their balance sheet, backfill it with new assets that can support that valuation. I think that you're still going to see that happening. They're going to have to justify that. But yeah, I mean, everyone's skating towards revenue, and with a limited market that Canada presents, really the only choice, if you're capitalized and structured well, is to be looking at U.S. assets that are cash flowing. They're legitimate. Just look at there were 2 acquisitions today, big. So they're happening, but they're all U.S. assets right now, because that market is under-regulated relative to Canada, so it makes for a safe haven for capital. So you've seen if anyone's here looking for money, I'm sure there are, in the Canadian market, there's just been a giant sucking sound, and it's, the sound of money, headed south. And that's where they want to be, because regulators are off our backs, and people can function, much better relative to the Canadian markets.
Well, so underregulated.
Relative to the Canadian market.
Still very regulated, but I think at the end of the day, look, it's the consumer market. It's a very mature consumer market, and there are companies making hundreds of millions of dollars off of in actual revenue running their businesses.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
you
what
look
we
at
don't see here.
The California market is roughly the same population as Canada. There's 6,000 or 7,000 licensed entities in California now, and they do it quickly. We've got 200 or 300. Our retail, the numbers from retailing. It's like we represent 13% of the population in Canada. Alberta, right across the border, they're I think 4%. They've got half the number of licensed retail outlets for the whole country, because the government is off, entrepreneurs' backs. So it's more successful, and there's more cannabis being sold in Alberta. Who would have thunk, right? But that's the relationship between efficiency, capital, and the markets, is where government is not intrusive. You see progress being made and people being able to, create healthy, safe products, that don't have a lot of garbage packaging on, that people want.
So your question essentially, if to restate it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is putting it in Bhang's perspective, is Bhang making different decisions now because there's pressure for us to be looking for bottom line revenue, as opposed to doing these, willy-nilly acquisitions looking for top line revenue?
Top line aesthetics, yeah.
I think from Bhang's perspective, we put together a really strong executive management team. We're all shareholders, So the duty that we have to shareholders is a duty we have to ourselves. We are all very interested in Bhang being very successful. So when you come at that question of, are we looking at bottom line revenue? Yes, we want to improve our COGS. We want to improve our top line revenue. We want it to filter down so that all of us are making more money. That isn't just because we have a responsibility at the end of the day to people. There's a lot of people trying to do these quick turn investments, and there's a big short game when you are in a small cap stock that you're watching, because you make this great announcement, your stock goes up, and then people sell, and because you don't have that much volume trading, that one sale can affect your stock price. It's a very tenuous game that we're in, but we just keep saying, I tell everybody that works for me, don't look at the stock price, make good decisions, because at the end of the day, if you're running a good business and you're making good decisions, the stock market becomes a weighing machine as opposed to that short-term market has spoken. And I want our company to be heavy at the end. I want us to be the biggest, baddest company we can be. But that's Bhang's perspective, and I know it's unusual. But to answer your question, out in the marketplace, yes, I'm seeing a shift. I'm seeing these big companies and the smaller, mid-cap stock companies are no longer just playing an M&A game. They're not gaming it anymore. We're starting to see a push for bottom line revenue, which I think will benefit the industry, all the way through.
It's a sign of maturity.
I think we're at another stage also. We went through a big investment cycle, and we sort of set the standards in the industry. What I'm seeing now is my investments are maturing. There are opportunities for them to grow and partner with others or whatever. But now I'm starting to look at the Israeli scene. I'm investing in a number of laboratories. I have a honey product that will take a long time, but will come to market. So I think that there's another shift that's going on. We saw the run-up of the Canadians becoming public, the stock market. But now for the investing crowd like me, I think we want to see what's new and how do we integrate it in what we have and where we think the market is going. The market is absolutely going to be a consumer market, but we're also producing high-quality, low-cost products for 7 billion people in this world. And I think we as an industry have this responsibility to take care of everyone, not just the luxury market, not just the craft market. This is an international product.
One more, I think, point on that is that we're having conversations internally on the executive team that there are a lot of really good brands out there that are making excellent products that aren't going to make it. They're undercapitalized, or they're in a state where the moons aren't lining up for them. And so we're also watching those brands very closely, because we know that there are going to be opportunities for us to come in and not contrary to what I said before, where I want to do M&A activity that's actually beneficial to Bhang, or plugs a hole or is a natural fit. But we're also looking to and seeing really smart people with really good brands that aren't going to make it, where we've got our eye on them too. And I think that's another shift in what's happening in the investment space.
Yes, and I think that in these investments that I'm making, it's sometimes not just the product, but it's the talent. The talent and the passion and their ability to pivot. So you bring in that IP to the company, to my company, and it can be utilized in other products and services.
Well, synergizing across all your
absolutely.
entrepreneurs, absolutely. So let's take it out to sort of a different facet of how the industry is growing. Let's talk about different products and verticals that right now you guys see as sort of the fastest growing, the comers. What verticals, specific sectors in the space? I hear a lot about beverages. That's been obviously something that's been out there. Happy to start with Paul on this one. You have something for us, bud?
Yeah,
What
for us,
verticals?
we've really looked at intellectual property as being an area that I think there's going to be a lot more focus on. In Canada, at least, it's all been about growing plants because the 2.0 products haven't been legal. When we look at other industries, biotech, life sciences, pharma, intellectual property tends to play a big role in M&A activity, but also in shareholder value. And I think for us, we've said from day one, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's go out there and acquire intellectual property from guys that have built it in an unregulated marketplace, and let's further develop it. Let's scale that with our engineers and file intellectual property around that. We see obviously these downstream formats that lead to more mass market appeal being what I think a lot of companies are going to be really focused on, whether that's through acquisition or developing those in-house. And even your example with the joint roller that you've licensed to Aurora, I think it's these new formats that maybe companies don't have that expertise or they don't have that technology in-house, so they're going to go to another market, whether it's the US or elsewhere, and look at licensing or acquiring it. And I think the new formats, at least in Canada, are going to really change, I think, how cannabis is consumed. But when you think about where cannabis needs to go today to where it needs to go, let's call it 10 years from now, is mass market appeal isn't going to be in the plant being smoked. It's going to be in all the non-smokables that the baby boomers and sort of today's non-consumers get comfortable with consuming through that method.
So I absolutely agree. And yes, Paul alluded to sort of our IP on the pre-roll side, and we actually use that IP as a form of non-dilutive financing. When we licensed our tech and got an 8-figure sum back with the royalty from Aurora. So it's right now, I would very much agree, me being a bit tainted, but IP is something that I see as something that will differentiate beyond what right now is on the market, which are essentially a lot of commoditized solutions. Everyone's selling the same things. It's just how do you do it a little better? Jamie, your point?
We always quote this famous Henry Ford saying where he said, if customers had asked me, if I had asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. He invented the car, obviously. Okay, so we're saying in that regard, customers don't know what they want because they don't necessarily look at the environment and think what's possible. So our job is to see what's possible, and those low barrier to entry delivery systems are kind of a no-brainer. The European, American, Canadian consumer already alters their brain with beverage. They already use wine and beer and alcohol to relax. So I try to picture my mom out there with a dab rig and a blowtorch, and she's probably not going to be dabbing, and neither am I. Just so you know, I did it once with my dad. It was not good, and I'm not going to dab ever again. But beverages, I think.
Note to self.
Note to self. Yeah, and if you ever want to know, just come ask me. It was unpleasant. But the beverage side of things, I think we can all wrap our brain around, and I think the beverage companies are trying to figure out in fact, Bobbi and I were talking about this in Palm Springs last week. It was, how do I go drinking with my friends, and I want to have 2 or 3 beverages and get high. I don't want to get drunk. So how do I do that? Because I like the way cannabis makes me feel, and I want to go have that social experience. And I think the companies that are figuring out how to do what consumers want and do it right, probably with IP. When Bhang's been an IP company, that's how we've spread our message and our footprint is through licensing IP the same way Wagner Dimas has. We also we see skincare, beauty products, men's grooming. We've got a female skincare line and a men's grooming line coming out because that's a low barrier to entry. People are already doing that, and dog treats and things that they do with their pets. If we can figure out a way to enhance consumers' lives in a way that's already accessible and easy and that they understand, I think the most important piece, though, is that the products have to work. And I think that's where, to Bobbi's point, we have a responsibility to be using good active ingredients, and the products need to be safe, and it can't just be lip service. It has to be what we're really doing.
I think the other thing that I'm on a quest for is to solve problems. So, for example, I think that osteoporosis is a gigantic problem in the world when you think of people over 50 and the diets that we use and so forth, and how it's breaking down bones. I'm looking at endometriosis and other glaucoma other issues that are international issues for the population that we can solve with cannabis. So it's not just a consumer game, but it's also solving the problems that we all face in some way with a female plant.
Very true. Patrick? Science and technology.
Yeah, I have
know
to
you're a big
agree
guy.
with everything that's been said. I'm most excited. I'm a flower guy, but I recognize in the beverage category that if you can create a new uptake, technology so that you're getting high, in 3 minutes, and you can continue imbibing, without getting, higher. But I think that means that the beverage has to have a rich cannabinoid and rich terpene recipe, and because that's what I want in the cannabis experience. I don't want just a THC. So that's technology, and I think that's one of the really exciting things. I really think that we're in the infancy of an industry. If you want to use a metaphor as a ball game, I think we're in the third inning, and it's just starting. There's so many incredible things that are going to happen, and we look at the euphoria that's been in the cannabis market over the last couple of years, but that's that. And at the end of the day, there's still millions of people that are going to be, consuming cannabis. So that market's not changing. We're just looking at the stock market and all of that. The underlying market is people and products that, provide a meaningful resolution to, health issues. I mean, at the end of the day, this is like a beautiful part of Mother Nature, and this is a gift. And so it's our obligation to share that gift, in our individual way, whether it's technology and, brands and products. So, that's how I see it.
Agreed. And so actually that's, when we start talking about how we convey this message and how we educate and inform, so a big part of that are sort of mass communications channels, and that in the US is challenging, and in some ways in Canada is even more challenging, right? The restrictions on marketing, advertising. I guess I'd love just some quick input on how that sort of fractures the entire playbook here, the restrictions on messaging right now in our industry relative to most anyone can say anything in their space. We can't.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most negative parts of the Cannabis Act and the regulations in Canada. It's a huge blow to the industry. As business people, we're artists. We're creating, something that we have for the rest of the world. And then you've got this body that's saying, no, you can't say that. Look at this wrapping that they're making you put on. It's the worst thing in the world. Yet they're making this, these are the laws, but it's not what we would, we would choose if it was us making the regulations. It's because it's them making the regulations. An ex-police chief, he was the guy that was appointed to, head up the discovery of regulations, and he was a prohibitionist. So what else are you going to get? So it's just, in a decade, the people sitting up on the panel, at the next ICBC in Vancouver in 10 years will be talking about the old days when it was crazy. But it's going to get better. It's just going to take a long time.
Here's what I would say about branding, and obviously it's very restrictive in Canada on what you can put on your packaging. But the reality is the best weed that's ever been sold in this province is coming from a clear plastic baggie, and. The reality is that product quality sells itself. I think actually the regs disproportionately affect the big producers, the guys that have found a way to work around, no celebrity endorsements, and they've got the rappers and everybody else on their label. But it's hard to sell swag when you can't do the same type of marketing that big alcohol and big tobacco and big CPG can do. So it really comes down to what's inside that packaging, and I think we've seen some craft producers, small LPs that have done exceptionally well over the last 5 years, and I think we're very excited to now see companies that can put out a great flower and now soon in a few months a great 2.0 product that will get consumers to gravitate. But it's going to absolutely be very difficult to build a brand. I think You're going to see a lot of brands actually get created in the U.S. to get brought to Canada, not that dissimilar from other things.
Yep.
That question brings me back to Palm Springs last week, where I just will tell you I'm so grateful to be in this industry. And 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was when I got into it, I was nervous about it. I'd come out of a really conservative spot, and bottom line is I saw the future in Palm Springs, and it blew my mind. And if you have a chance, you need to look up the Knox doctors. It's a family of doctors, Jessica, Rachel, and Janice Knox. There's two more doctors, but the three women were there. It was a women's conference. They're endocannabinoists. One of them was an anesthesiologist. The other one was a integrative medicine. They're all three physicians. There's five Knox physicians in this family. They are figuring out, they all went back and figured out that the endocannabinoid system has receptors in the heart and in the brain. We all know this, but we all know that we don't know what we don't know yet. And the future of CPG, the Knox doctors are going to bring us there. Because what's going to happen is we're going to start to understand, oh, I have infertility problems, or I have Crohn's disease, or something autoimmune. And there is some endocannabinoid reason that, because we don't have access to this research, that they're going to be able to say, oh, keep your CB1 receptor needs to get this endocannabinoid or this terpene, but you're trying to get pregnant, so let's make sure we're not doing this to you. We don't have access to that level of research yet, but it's coming, and these women are superstars. Go check them out, because they are going to lead the physicians in this nation to figure that out, and that's what's coming. Right now we're talking about marketing and what we can and can't do with marketing. I think it's information that's going to drive consumers, that's going to drive marketing, right? So,
Absolutely, and we're not just talking about logos. It's to be able to compel folks to understand what's in this product, and having hands tied is brutal. It's unlike any other vertical, and I'll say beyond sort of that high-level messaging, you're also talking about being blocked off, essentially not have access to massive platforms, social media, Google, who everyone's got access to but us. And that's a massive problem for us in the US as well. So where it's not necessarily, regulation or health disclaimers, we deal with that as well.
We can't make health claims. We all have people that say, I can't sleep without cannabis, but we can't make health claims about our products. But we know people are using it for anxiety, pain relief, all of these things. We can't talk about it. So we can't give consumers good information about dosing and usage and health benefits because we can't talk about it. We can't have access to platforms. So I just want us to think bigger as an organization,
well,
as an industry.
Really, it comes down to giving these folks just the opportunity to choose this sort of natural product versus other solutions that are being pumped by other industries. That's what we don't have the right to do right now, in my opinion, to the degree that we should. Anyway,
we're talking about Canada and the U.S., but I think we need to look at this as a global industry and a global set of products that we're developing as brands that will be used everywhere. So just setting the stage that this is.
But Bobbi, it's all emanating from the U.S. and Canada, so they're all going to run into the same issues when their market matures to that level. So if we execute on this and start to solve it in the U.S. and Canada, those solutions will emanate out, I think, when they adopt.
I look at it in two ways. Right now and currently and for the foreseeable future, entrepreneurs are going to be frustrated by regulations and regulators. In a decade, many of the regulations that are obstructing us will be gone. But the beautiful thing about it is that, and Brother Marley taught us this, is that cannabis represents the truth. And that's why it's been, part of the prohibition agenda, to keep you away and keep us away from that which represents the truth. They want to segregate us so that we're actually not seeing reality and seeing the truth. And so it's out. And that's what's happening now. And it's saving lives, it's changing lives, it's making people wealthier and happier and getting them off that shit that, Big Pharma is pushing on us and is protected by, through regulations. But it's just a matter of time. The truth is out.
I think if we've quoted Bob, we've got to end it at that, because I think it's not going to go past that. But I'll say this, it is hard. It's going to get easier, but everyone's getting their legs now. You build your company when it's hard, because it is hard, and you persevere and you get it done, and that's why you're all in this room, doing it when it's hard. And you guys will get the benefit of that. We all will. With that said, we've got a couple more minutes, and Ngayo.
I'm right here. One more time for Dean and the entire panel. All right. Who's got a question? Question? Anyone have a question? You've all been super well informed. Nothing? It's very comprehensive. All right, that's fine with me. I don't care. Oh, no? Here? Yes? Oh, there you are. I didn't see you. Here I come. Come on. I'm up. Oh, we got to figure out a way. Scooch in. Make a hole.
So my question, I haven't spoken on one of these before. My question is to Patrick. So I know that Pasha Browns is very, they really look at the culture of cannabis, where it's come from, the community. How would you encourage small retail business owners that don't have 10 years, to put money into the business and wait for the payoff? Right?
Are you opening a store?
I have a license, and my mom and I owned a store in Abbotsford.
Okay. And it's gray market right now?
It is.
Okay. And you're asking...
I'm asking...
how to navigate the time
how to navigate it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Because you're saying the payoff is going to say 10 years.
It's miserable. Yeah.
Exactly.
Give her a better
How
answer.
do you
man.
encourage
No,
us?
I'll be honest.
How do we
retail
get
is
excited
going,
about this? 'Cause-
Retail is going to be miserable. Tilray just paid $70 million
Right.
like last week or the week before for 20 locations in Alberta. Because Brendan is a very smart guy, and he's not waiting for it. He's going after a market that exists today. Are your doors open still? You're great.
No, we're closed. I'm not even just asking for myself. I'm asking for the community of small business owners.
No, the business community that's represented the gray market, they're survivors. They're smarter than
Right.
the regulated group, because they've been having to dodge and weave for all this time. And
So keep fighting.
yeah, don't I say my T-shirts,
collaborate.
stay gray and keep the lights on, and
Okay.
let Health Canada and regulators prove to you that they're actually doing what they're supposed to, which
Yeah.
is opening stores and letting people grow, and just go toe to toe. All the change that's occurred in Canada is Kirk and John, and the lawyers, Rob Laurie's here as well. These are the people that have really made the effective changes, but it's been the community funding it, and keeping it all alive. That's why we're in the position we're in right now. It's not because Harper and Trudeau actually care.
So you guys are in a place where it's what California has done, and it's a massive regulated market now, but it started, you guys call it a gray market. We didn't really have a name for it. It was just what it was since, 1996 when Prop 215 came out, the medical market. And a lot of those survivors are now running some of the biggest compliant operators in the state. So hang in there.
Thanks for a great panel. I just wanted to ask all of you, as you're considering brands that you're looking for, one of the strangest parts of the shifting sands of Canadian commerce right now is the fact that the whole medical industry seems to have been swept under the rug or normally forgotten. So I'm wondering, in the US especially, where you have more states that are medical than recreational, how many of you are looking for brands that have medical orientation versus recreational?
I think that as states have, in the U.S. have opened up, either regulated or fully legal, that the recreational market is both medical and recreational. So if I'm buying a medical product and I'm in a legal state that sells recreational, I'll just buy my product that way, I believe. And I think that we don't have the same differential in medical and fully legal that we had a couple of years ago. And so I think it's what I'm saying is I believe it's an evolving story. And that.
Yeah, I don't think a medical brand in Canada, if it's emerging, is valuable in the United States. It's going to be legal federally.
But I do believe we need medical products, as we were talking about before.
So that's a great point. Yes.
We need medical products. We need to solve ailments and diseases. And it's our responsibility as an industry to take this female plant and find that research and do it and struggle with it and bring it to market.
However, the overarching idea there is, I think, exactly what Patrick said. In my opinion, there's now it's blurred as far as, do you want it medical or do you want it, or someone looking for, medical sort of driven products, or is it recreational? We're in California. It's far and away the biggest market. We don't look at it. That's not a question for us. Medical.
From Bhang's
there's only one
perspective?
market. Yeah.
From Bhang's perspective, I don't know the statistic. I'm sure somebody out there can shout it out. But there's a statistic that says some large percentage of recreational users are using cannabis for medical reasons. So you don't need the brand, I think, to Bobby's point, to be medically oriented, because the consumer's deciding what they're using it for, whether they're using it recreationally to get high with their friends, or they're using it to sleep, or they're using it for pain relief. I think the brand has to be compelling, and it has to be safe, and it has to provide a service that people are looking for. But if you orient it medically, I think you're leaving a lot on the table. I wouldn't recommend it.
MJ Biz and New Frontier Data did a study, and they came out with a report called Archetypes. It's very available. I don't know what the cost is these days, but it's not a lot. But it's a very valuable report because it segments older users and different types. It's a study that I have never seen before. The industry was astonished, and I think you should all take a look at it, because what we're seeing is many, many, many different niches in the buying public. And those niches will become forces as we do our research and deliver more products to market, I believe.
Thank you so very much. I hate to cut everybody off, but we are way over time. One more time. That was super great.